If you're looking for proven ways to take your fundraising results to the next level, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Intentional Fundraiser podcast, hosted by Tammy Zonker. Tammy has trained and led thousands of nonprofit organizations to collectively raise more than $500 million and is also recognized as one of America's top 20 fundraising experts. This is the podcast where Tammy equips and empowers amazing fundraising pros like you to transform your fundraising so you can transform the world. And now, let's hear from Tammy.
Today, we're recording from the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference in beautiful San Diego, California. With me is my good friend, Cherian Koshy, who is also speaking here and a lot of other places these days. You may remember Cherian as our guest in episode 13 of the Intentional Fundraiser podcast, where we talked about fundraising in a challenging economy. Cherian is a fan favorite around here. He brings more than 25 years of leadership to the nonprofit sector. He's founder of the Nonprofit Operating System, an AI-driven platform enhancing nonprofit efficacy, which was just acquired by iWave in October of this year. And now, Cherian serves as the Vice President of Product Strategy at iWave. He's a keynote speaker. He's dedicated to sharing insights on nonprofit strategy, fundraising, and innovation. His passion for leveraging technology for social progress is underlined by his expertise in behavioral economics. And beyond speaking engagements, he's a CFRE, a CAP, that's Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy, an AFP Master Trainer, Quadrant 3 Leadership Coach, licensed Scale Architect, and certified virtual presenter. He currently serves on the AFP Global Board as the Vice Chair of Professional Development and is former Chair of Volunteer Iowa. And if I may add, Cherian is one of the warmest, kindest, most engaging, and smartest people that I know. Cherian, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Tammy. I'm going to have you, I feel like the last time you did an introduction was the same thing. I need to have you do introductions for me all the time. That was so wonderful.
Well, it's all true.
Well, thank you for having me back. It truly is an honor. Your podcast is one of my favorites, and I always love hearing from all of your guests and hearing your great insights as well. So I'm thrilled to be on today.
Thank you. Thanks, Cherian. So let's just start by talking about the Nonprofit Operating System. Why did you create it? And how does it help nonprofit professionals leverage artificial intelligence to do good work?
You bet. So back when we were talking last on the podcast, we were talking about fundraising in a challenging economy, and this was impacting a lot of my friends, especially in small and mid-sized organizations. And they were having trouble doing what they knew they needed to do, but didn't have the people, resources to do it, or the budget to be able to do it. And even in terms of consulting, there was only so much that I could do. So I built this tool truly out of a need that I saw in the organization I was working in, because we had lost 2/5 of our staff or something like that,
Wow.
3/5 of our staff. And we were down to a very limited number of people. We still needed to do appeals and gratitude and impact reports. And so I thought, what if AI could get to the point where it was a draft that I could review? And you know me well enough, but maybe your listeners don't, that I'm not super good at sitting in front of a screen and typing something out from scratch. I'm going to go find the Gail Perry template letter or the Tom Ahern template letter and start to kind of zhuzh that up based upon what we know to be right and good. And so I used AI to help me develop those first drafts. And then I shared it with some colleagues and they said, hey, this is pretty good. You should make this available to others. Lo and behold, 200 nonprofits started using it. And then iWave said that they wanted it to be part of their suite of products. And I was thrilled to be part of them because I was an iWave customer at the time. I knew how much their services helped me as a fundraiser. And so it was just a perfect fit.
I love it. So good. When we see a need and can bring resource and solutions to it, it's just a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to just acknowledge too that sometimes there can be a scarcity mentality in our sector. And what I'm hearing in that kind of origin story of NOS is that this worked for us. We have to make it available to others. We have to share. I love that. That's who I know you to be, Cherian. So congratulations on the iWave partnership and acquisition of NOS and your new position as VP of Product Strategy. Fundraising Transformed is an iWave partner and big fans of the product and the customer service and the people. So tell us how that acquisition really complements their services.
Yeah. So there's two things that actually sort of drove me to be super excited and super willing to partner with iWave and then ultimately to be acquired by them. The first is that iWave has just incredible insight into who your donors are and who those prospects are with so many different data points that I don't think are available elsewhere. And I've tried them all. And I was, as you know, as I said, I was an iWave customer at the nonprofit I was working in right before the acquisition. And we used it regularly to understand who our donors were. We had the privilege of having the resources and the people to be able to translate that into whatever we were going to do, whether it was appeals or whatnot. Not every nonprofit does have that ability or those people. So there's a couple of ways that the integration between the two really strengthens both pieces. You can buy them separately, of course, but one example is I was actually doing a keynote in New Orleans at the AFP chapter there. And I got this call early in the morning. It was a lunch keynote. I got this call in the morning, and my major gift officer said, "Hey, our CEO is meeting with someone at lunchtime. I'm driving in a car. You're doing a keynote. Can you just pull the iWave profile of this person and send it to me? I'll do the summary and the talking points in the car ride." And I was like, sure. So I pulled it up. 10 seconds later, it was on its way. And I thought, got a little bit of time. Maybe I'll see if AI can help with this. And I loaded the profile into the nonprofit operating system, asked it to summarize 54 pages of giving records and history of this donor, as well as provide some talking points to the CEO. And 30 seconds later, I kid you not, Tammy, there it was.
Wow.
I sent this over to our major gift officer and I said, I wonder if it could build a proposal. I wonder if it could build a stewardship strategy. And it did. I sent those over and I said, double check with the records, make sure this is what you would say. She's like, yeah, this is spot on. And spent 20, 30 minutes double checking and whatnot, but it was just so great. And so that's where I think the two products come alive really with that opportunity. But then really being able to write to those different segments. And the example that I'll give you is we probably know that you've got these different groups of, for example, iWave planned givers, people who are ideal planned givers, and we focus on them. We send out our appeals to say, hey, let's talk about planned giving. And that's one of the things I'm super proud of with Nonprofit OS is unlike ChatGPT that would say, give us a gift in your will. It says, would you like to meet? Every single time it will say, would you like to meet to talk about a planned gift? But even with enough resources, you would be focused on those ideal planned givers. What if you could create a campaign just for people who are prospective planned givers and put that out at the same time you were spending your one-on-one attention with the ideal planned giver so that when they're ready to make a planned gift, they have that information. So that's where I think the integration between the two really will be able to help organizations do more and be able to engage folks that they know that they need to engage, but just don't have the time or resources to be able to do.
Yeah, it's a powerful example. And not only the time saved in what it would take for all of us to pull the data, that's a heavy lift.
Yeah.
Without automation, without technology.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to do that, but with such accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really smart. And I think so many organizations feel like, gosh, we just don't have the budget to invest in those kind of tools. But when you look at the efficiencies and the return on investment, when you secure those gifts, when you have more people leaving you in their legacy plans, you can't afford not to.
Yeah, I mean, it pays for itself in a single gift, right? It literally does. But from my perspective, and I've said this probably in every talk I've given on AI, which is that we shouldn't be looking at AI as an opportunity for well-meaning board members or executive leadership team to say, okay, Tammy, we want you to do twice as much work. What I really think AI gives us the ability to do is lean in with our learned and lived experience. We're here at Storytelling Conference. We're learning a lot about what we could do, but implementing all of that takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And just take your session in particular. We're going to listen to the session. We're going to take those away, and then we're going to sit down and put those into practice, which we absolutely should do. But if you're starting with a blank screen, if you're starting with an appeal or something like that and have to write it from scratch and then apply the layers of Tammy genius on, that's more time. But if I have something that's pre-written, that's 80% of the way there, and then I apply the Tammy genius to it, now I'm off to the races a little bit faster. And all of this is designed from my perspective, where I think the value is to enable a nonprofit professional to shut their laptop, to go home, to spend time with their friends and family, to just be done for once,
Yeah.
to just have the checklist crossed off. And if we could get closer to that, I'm not saying we'll get there all the way, but if we could get closer to that, that's the win.
Absolutely. And maybe it'll help solve our retention on these high turnover rates that we're experiencing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And by the way, I love that Tammy genius phrase. I think I might,
Trademark
trademark
it.
that.
Absolutely. I'll get that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, we'll watch my children laugh me out of the house when I wear that t-shirt in. So let's talk a little bit more about the use of AI in fundraising. From your experience, which is considerable, what are the must-dos for organizations that maybe are a little apprehensive to jump into this technology or simply just don't know where to start?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing with regard to any sort of technology is not to focus on the technology itself. I think there's an element of technology that's important to recognize is part of our lived experience all around us, right? So the pace of technology changing is incredible, but we also live in a world where the technology has adapted in a way that impacts every part of our lives. So, none of us have stuck our thumb out on the street and hitchhiked in probably quite a long time. I know some people that did back in the 80s, right? Or the 70s, but nobody does that anymore. But nobody gives a second thought to being picked up by a stranger in an Uber. It's the same principle.
Right.
But technology shifts how we look at something like that. And rarely before would we be inclined to find a date or a significant other online, but now that happens all the time. So rather than focus on the technology and what's called the tech stack, all of the different technologies that an organization has, I think we need to focus on the trust stack. And what I mean by that is inside your organization, you probably have people who are concerned about the use of automation or AI because they don't know how that will affect their jobs or their long-term career potential. And we need to address that first and foremost as leaders in the profession. We have to let people know that we're using this not for the purposes of eliminating staff or increasing their workloads, but to help them include their lived and learned experience as part of their process so that they can do the things that make the most difference to them, the things that bring them joy. And so as part of that organizational change aspect, we really have to sit with our own values, our own personal values, and understand what are the things that I love to do when I get up in the morning? What are the things that I'm excited about? For me in particular, that's not drafting appeal letters. It's just not. I mean, I'll do it if I have to. Same thing with data analysis. I'll do it if I have to. That doesn't bring me joy. Talking to donors, sitting across the table from them, hearing their stories and inviting them to participate in the mission of the organization, that's what gets me thrilled, jazzed up about what we do. So if I can get to that part faster, that's what I want to do. But there are people, friends of ours that we know, that love the writing process. That's what they want to do. So if that's you, there's other AI tools that focus on the things that you don't love to do, right? Identify those and figure out how to integrate those and play with them. Try them out, see what works. If there are people who happen to hate writing but love data, they love sitting in front of spreadsheets and that brings them joy, God bless them. Those are not my people, but that's great.
But we need them.
We need them. We do. So those people should find other tools. And the age of AI that we're in now allows so much opportunity, not only with the commercial tools that are out there, but you can sit down and just build something yourself. I did. I watched YouTube videos instead of Netflix during the pandemic and just built something, right? And everyone can do this. And there's this whole movement around citizen development of AI tools. So really any nonprofit professional, anyone that works in any field really can start building something that helps create the solution that they need in their organization. And I think that's a huge opportunity. Where I think there's a big difference today with AI than there was with some other technologies is that with other things like, cryptocurrency or NFTs, you could elect not to participate in that. You could choose not to fundraise with cryptocurrency. Totally fine. With AI, it's built into everything that we do, right? It's built into Gmail. It's built into Outlook. It's built into web searches now. It's unavoidable. So what I would encourage all of your listeners to kind of think about is how do we address the kind of existing reality of where we are today? And how do we manage that change appropriately as opposed to avoid the change until it's too late? So anything that we can do to address that trust stack, get people comfortable with where we are going inevitably, and manage that process intentionally is what I would recommend.
I love that. A couple of things about it. I love one is that you're really saying like, it's here, it's not going away. I mean, to ignore it would be the equivalent of saying, oh, the internet is a passing fad 30 years ago, right? It's not going away. And secondly, what I love, Cherian, is that you brought the humanity to AI. What are your values? What is your zone of genius? What brings you the most joy? What is the most productive, has the biggest return on investment, is the thing that really lights you on fire and that you do with such excellence. Let's focus there and look to these tools, AI, to help supplement the things that maybe aren't that life-giving. I love that. And to build your team who have different values and gifts and talents and passions, to build that team and to really think about AI as an additional member of your team.
Absolutely.
The one who does everything no one wants to do.
That's right. One example that I give all the time of that is a tool. I don't have any affiliate agreement with them or anything like this, but there's a tool that joins every Zoom call that I'm in, and it's called fireflies.ai. And it does the job that quite literally no one wants to do, which is take notes in a meeting. And how many times do we relegate that task to someone who we'd love to have their participation, their full attention in the meeting, so they can bring their insight into the conversation, but they're busy taking notes. And their time and their mental capacity is split between participating and taking notes. Now we have an entire recording of that we can ask questions. What did Tammy say about AI? Who moved the budget amendment? We can ask it questions and have that information. We don't have to derail a person's engagement in the meeting to be able to do that.
Oh, love it, love it. What can we expect in the years ahead? Let's just say the next 12 months.
Sure.
Get your crystal ball out and tell us, what can we expect from AI?
I think if I had that, I would be in a very different. I think someone once said that you can be a futurist if you say what will happen but not when, or when it will happen but not what. I think there will continue to be a significant explosion of opportunity in the AI space, particularly relevant to our sector. I think some people will slap AI as a label on anything they can in order to wave a magic wand on the problems that we face as a sector and say, well, we can find new donors and we can get donors to give more. And what I would suggest is that we need to be cautious of tools that suggest that there is any kind of easy button when it comes to any of the work that we do. We all know that this is hard, messy stuff, and it's not going to be fully automated. There's no version of letting AI take control over everything that we do, and we sit back and kind of watch it happen like some kind of, weird fundraising machine. However, I do think there will be continued advancement and opportunity to find those pain points that we all have and make those pain points less of a pain point if we're cognizant of the role of technology and the role of the human influence in philanthropy. I think there's an opportunity for us to actually increase how we're engaging with donors and stakeholders, community stakeholders and volunteers in a meaningful way. And what I mean by that, I'm giving a talk here at the Storytelling Conference about the magic of memory. I'm going to do actual stage magic, poorly, but there's going to be some stage magic. But my point there, which I'll spoil now because this is coming out after that, the question that I'm going to ask is, what if our donor retention problems are impacted, not solely, but impacted by the fact that donors forget that they gave, they forgot how much they gave, they forgot why they gave, or they forgot the impact that they had? What if there's an impact that we're not addressing? And so all of the things that we talk about around storytelling and emotions are all true, absolutely. But we tend to sort of quick hit this infusion of content and emotion and story into someone's life, and we don't create that long-lasting memory. And what if the technology can help us stay on top of a donor, stakeholder, volunteer's mind so that it becomes essentially like muscle memory? This is what I do. This is who I am. And the cause identity is fused with that stakeholder's identity so that this is part of their everyday experience. That's what I'm sort of excited about in the next 12 months, to see where technology can get us with regard to getting closer to that sort of ideal.
Yeah. I haven't really thought about it like that. It is almost like a roller coaster.
It
We
is.
send the gratitude, the gift acknowledgement letter, which hopefully has impact statements.
Mhm.
We share, a board member maybe calls and does a thank you call. We share an impact report, or maybe we have a special gathering for supporters or monthly givers, and we tell stories and they feel, that warm glow all over again. But it's the roller coaster.
It
We do
is.
that at the peaks, and then there are these vast parts of the ride that are somewhat uneventful.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's actually one of the slides in the presentation. My mom has diabetes. And so one of the things that she has to do on a regular basis is take the medication to keep her blood sugar from going too far up or too far down. But basically, for anybody who has that disease or whatnot, you know that you're sort of punching the drug into your system. And that's what we're doing with our approaches most of the time. We're not creating this sort of self-defining component of the donor experience where donors say, this is who I am, and I just need to be reinforced. And the other analogy that I use is when I'm pushing my daughter on the swing, my goal is to get her to kind of move under her own momentum. I don't want to be the stopping point, pushing her constantly forward. I want to pull her back to some memory that she has, the donor in this case, some memory that she has that's going to drive her forward so that even if I'm not there, Cherian is the VP of development or whatever, even if I'm not there, that donor's momentum continues. Even if the appeal isn't there, they're still excited to be part of the cause on their own steam.
Yeah.
How do we get to that point? That's what I'm really curious about and excited about.
Yeah, that is exciting. I even liken it to maybe like a personal relationship, whether it's with a spouse or a partner. And what if they only express their love to us like once a quarter?
Yes. Yes.
That wouldn't last very long.
Yes.
And it doesn't last very long with our donors.
Right.
We have a huge retention problem.
Yep.
I love that you're thinking that your Cherian genius is on that work. I mean, we need to solve for that. I know that you and Craig O'Neill, the CEO of iWave, are speaking about how to use fundraising intelligence to fuel your storytelling here at the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference. Again, without stealing too much thunder, and this will be produced and shared after the conference, give us a few tips about AI and storytelling specifically.
Yeah. So I think part of it is we're all interested in telling good stories, right? But one of the things that fundraising intelligence and storytelling combined with AI can help us do is find ways in which we can understand where the donor story is. So that example that I gave you of the donor profile, we got to understand who this donor is very quickly from scanning those records through AI and understand the things that were important to them because the AI was able to recognize trends in their giving. What are the causes that they care about? This donor particularly cared about education. So how could our CEO tap into that part of the donor story? And we were a workforce development education organization. They are, I'm not there anymore, but how do we connect the dots and put the organization's cause as part of the donor story? So we're really truly listening to the experience of the donor based upon what we know and amplifying the impact of that story because it's connected to something they already care about. That's where I think the real power is of these combined tools, because sometimes we're just trying to tell those emotional gut punch stories, which certainly have an impact. They have an effect because emotions mean something to us and emotional storytelling means something to us. But if we can weave a story that connects all the dots together, that's where I think the real power is.
Really powerful. In that, I'm sure through that process, the donor, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, feels like, I really feel seen and heard and valued. They get me.
Mm-hmm.
And AI can help support that.
And one of the adjacent examples to that is asking AI to help you identify the questions that would most evoke those types of stories or learning from the donor. So one of the questions, this is pre-AI, but when I was working in the performing arts, one of the questions that we talked about asking our donors was not what was your first performance, but who took you to your first performance. And now we get a more personal story about the person that was important to them. there might be an element of like an honor or a memorial gift. So that's a side issue. But what I really wanted to do when we talked to donors was understand who was that person that meant something to you that first introduced you to a live performance, and kind of go back to those emotional experiences with that person, because now you sort of have that warm glow that can't be taken away, right? For most people, it was their mom, right? That's what we heard from most people, was that it was their mom, and they loved talking about their mom and their memories of their mom and getting dressed up and going down to the theater and all of that. And it brought something to them that was really meaningful, and it connected those pieces, right? That story is something that we could never create for them, but we can sustain as part of the conversation. And now we're in a whole different spot with that donor than just, you liked Hamilton or you liked Come From Away or whatever. And it was an episodic memory that you have.
It's really beautiful. Not only affirming their identity as a donor or a supporter of your arts organization, but affirming their identity, their life, those moments, those special people. And what I also really appreciate about this part of our conversation is that we have struggled in equitably stewarding supporters, right? We've been focused, like, who get the one-on-one attention, the people who give whatever your threshold is, $1,000 and above, $5,000 and above, whatever your threshold of a major gift is. And even when I do fundraising effectiveness assessments with organizations, you see maybe their overall donor retention is 40%, maybe a little lower, but at those higher gift values, they're significantly higher, 70%, 75%, because we take the time.
Right.
So this can give us the tools to begin understanding our monthly donors, our first-time donors over time, right? And really giving us tools to be more equitable in nurturing those connections and their identity, why they gave in the first place.
Absolutely. And just to deepen that even further, how many times do we give short shrift to our volunteers, right? We do a one-off thank you or something like that, or we do a volunteer appreciation banquet. These are people who are donating significantly to our organization, many of whom are also donating money or are inclined to donate money. And we don't do the basic things that we should do to steward that relationship. So what I found with a lot of organizations, in fact, a lot of large organizations, is that for those introductory level gifts, those mid-level gifts, the monthly gifts, there's a templated automatic thank you that happens when they make their gift. Maybe there's a form thank you letter that's sent to them as part of the stewardship process. Where technology enables us to go even further than the template with AI is to write something that's bespoke to each person based upon their experience. Tammy, thank you so much for volunteering this month. It made such a difference. Here's how your volunteering impacted the lives of kids in our community, whatever it might be. And it's written and it's different every single time.
Yes.
That's what I think. And, obviously we still want to have a human look at that and touch it and make sure that it actually represents your volunteerism. But whether it's an introductory level gift, a monthly gift, whatever it might be, how can we make these donors feel as special as they really are? Because they are doing something that they don't have to do. And I think sometimes we lose track of that because we're so hyper-focused on whoever our largest givers are and allocating time inequitably, as you brilliantly mentioned.
Yeah. Such good stuff. Now, you recently participated in the Fundraising AI Global Summit, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was amazing. And there were some great conversations about ethics and the use of AI in fundraising and donor development. From your perspective, what were the most important takeaways about ethical use of AI in fundraising?
So I think the first thing to recognize is that no one is an expert in this space or generally in AI, right? Because while AI has been a term of art since the 1950s and it's been around for a long time, Ken Jennings lost to IBM Watson 12 years ago or so. So it's been a while. So AI is not new, but the access to AI is very new and its implications on society are very new and the ethical implications are very new. So I think I have more questions than answers on that subject. Where I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding that I want to clear up is around some of the kind of privacy elements. People will say, we don't want to have our information as part of these models, whether it's OpenAI and ChatGPT or something else. I want to clarify, data privacy is important. We need to be thoughtful, especially about the privacy of specific donor information. But when it comes to information that's available on your website or information that's just publicly available, that is what helps donors find you in the world of thousands and thousands of nonprofits, even in your local community. So you sort of do want that information out there, because that's how, if someone types in places to volunteer near me, they find your organization, or animal shelter near me, whatever it might be. So we want to be thoughtful of the fact that some elements of privacy are appropriate to be included and some are not. Then there's the issue of attribution. And if your listeners are academic institutions and they're organizations who are figuring out how students write papers, that's a different space than, for example, fundraising appeals. If you and I collaborated on a fundraising appeal or a case for support, there's no need to let the donors know that you and I did that, right? That's not relevant. We could have 14 people, we'd have everyone at the conference help contribute to an appeal. And sometimes in some organizations, you have too many people who are involved in that. But we're not attributing it to specific individuals as part of that process. So I just want to clarify that's there. I think the largest ethical issue that I want to keep forefront is how this is impacting the workforce, the people that nonprofits employ. So how do we make sure that we are mindful of that and the implications on everyone inside the organization? And then, of course, being mindful of how personal identifiable information might be used in order to create models of who will give more or who will be a good prospective donor. That's where I start to get a little nervous, just because the data could not lend itself to the most equitable decisions or priorities. So I want to be thoughtful of that, but really it's just about continuing to ask those questions and being vigilant about the ethical use of AI.
Really awesome, Cherian. Thank you. If you enjoyed today's conversation and the insights that Cherian has shared and want to learn more, check out the links and the resources we've included in the show notes. Now, Cherian, this is not your first rodeo with us, so we like to ask some rapid fire questions.
I do. I'm came prepared.
Okay, awesome. So first one, what's the best fundraising advice you've ever received?
The best fundraising advice I've ever received was to really focus on the authentic relationship with the donor. There are things that are said explicitly, but there are things that are unsaid. And so it really is, as you're having those conversations with donors, to really come back to what are the things that this donor really cares about? What are the things that drives them? What's the story that they're telling? And how do we understand who these people are? Because I think we tend to kind of forget in all of our data-driven decision-making that there are real people in every element of what we do, on both the donor side, on the people that we serve side. So just remembering that there are people behind all of those different data points is the best advice that I've really
love that. I mean, really honoring them for their, the whole of them, right? Those vulnerable places, the reasons that they give, the stories, like it was my mother who took me to my first performance.
And they're true imperfections, right? None of us are perfect people. We all make mistakes. We all say things that we shouldn't and do things that we shouldn't. And our donors are no different. So we shouldn't have some idealized version of a donor experience. And how do we relate to people as people?
Yeah. All right. What book do you recommend to our audience and why?
I have so many books that are on my shelf and continually driving my learning as well. The most recent book that I just picked up is called Blind Sight, and it's really fascinating. It's a little bit of behavioral science, a little bit of memory, a little bit of marketing. It's just a fascinating read. I think it's a couple years old, but I'm just getting to it. And it's one that I think would just be fascinating for any nonprofit professional to read.
Awesome. All right. Amazon.com. Here I come.
Yes.
What are the 3 most important traits a successful fundraiser must possess?
That's pretty straightforward to me. I think it's 3 L's. It's listening, learning, and love. So every good fundraiser needs to listen. As I mentioned before, it's not just listening for the words that people are saying. It's also not listening for the purposes of responding to what someone is saying. It's also listening for the heart, for the intention behind what's being said. and then probing, as you do so well on this podcast, probing deeper and understanding more about the subject and, whether it's a donor experience, a volunteer experience, the stakeholder, whatever it might be. The second piece is learning. I don't think we can ever say, I figured it out, I know what I'm doing, and I don't need any help. I think if we're good fundraisers, we're consistently learning about our own craft. We're learning from professionals in the space, like we're doing here at the conference, but we're also learning from people outside of the sector who can sort of challenge our kind of core beliefs and tell us, maybe that's not right. And so how do we test that? And the last thing is love. I don't think that anybody can do this work without loving what they're doing, but loving the people that are involved. And I don't mean that in a weird way. Obviously, philanthropy's the root is about love, and knowing that there is something bigger than all of us is really important. I think sometimes we lose track of the love that we should rightly have for the profession, for the sector. So am I doing something when I do ethics talks? I talk a lot about how love of the profession, love of philanthropy as a sector will drive us to make different decisions than just love of our own paycheck or love of our own job. So as we're thinking about what's bigger, broader, what's most important, it's not about doing our job and going home at night. We want to do that, of course, and feel satisfied in that work. But there's something bigger that I think we're called to. And that's why it's exciting to be in this profession with friends and colleagues like you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I could not agree more. It's so important. What's your favorite fundraising application or tool? And you might have a little bias around this, but feel free.
Of course I do. I have, besides my own, of course, I love applications and tools. Like I will try pretty much everything out there. One of the tools that I'm really excited about right now is really seeing how you can talk with data. And so there's a couple of tools out there. One is called Accio, just like Harry Potter, AKKIO. That's really cool. And I am excited about that and seeing how that plays out. So fun times.
Listeners, I told you he's one of the smartest people I know. There we go. What's your favorite conference and why as we sit here at the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference?
Yeah, exactly.
And you can name two then.
Well, so this is my first time at storytelling. And I am
really
thrilled. Yes.
Shocking.
It is shocking. Honestly, I don't know how it just has not timed out properly with other places I've been. I also really love the Neo Summit. It's sort of an unconference model, which is really fun. But I love conferences. I go to so many of them. Icon is great for its bigness and, just the big stage and meeting thousands of people all at once. And then those little tiny conferences with 50 people are also fun. So for me, it's just whatever floats your boat at that time or season of your life or of the year is what's right for you. I just love learning. I love hearing from people. I sat in sessions this morning. Can't wait to get into other sessions later today.
Fantastic. I love it. Knowing what you know now about fundraising, what advice would you give your younger self just getting started in the profession, Cherian?
Yeah. So my coach, Rory Vaden, says that you are best positioned to help the person you once were. And that is such good advice that the number one thing that I would have said to myself 25 years ago when I started in this profession would be ask for help. I felt like I needed to prove myself. I felt like I needed to do it all myself. I felt like I needed to keep mistakes away from public eye. And you and I, we've done a presentation about fundraising mistakes.
Yeah, I think it was What Happens in Vegas Stays in Vegas.
Right.
And we dished with Rachel Muir about our biggest fundraising mistakes in front of a big conference.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I shared in that session is that early on, I would hide mistakes. I would not want to talk about them. I would just move on from them. And nothing would scare me more than standing in front of a few hundred people at a conference and saying, I really screwed up. I screwed up as a leader, as a manager. I screwed up as a fundraiser. And now looking back, I wish I had just kind of shook myself and said, listen, there are people out there who care about you and want you to do better, and they can help you. And what I want your listeners to know is that is definitely true. There are people out there who care about you and what you're doing and genuinely just want to help you have an impact in your career, in your organization, in your cause area. seek out those people. That's why I love going to these conferences, is because these are my people and I get to talk to them about work stuff, about fundraising stuff, about life stuff, all the things. And that's my lifeline, is the ability to connect with people from all over the country, all over the world. And so I would just say, ask for help all the time. Walk up to some speaker that you feel like is up there and knows all the things and ask for help. And ideally they will share with you, hey, I've been in this hole and I know the way out.
Yeah. And I think that is such an amazing opportunity for leaders to say, listen, I don't have this all figured out. I've stepped in big holes.
Yeah.
I've dug big holes throughout my career, and let others know it's okay. It's normal. Like, don't leave the profession. Don't hide out. We used to have at my team on the Children's Center, we would say, fail faster.
Yep.
And let's talk about your mistakes so that you can make new mistakes, but don't make the same mistakes I've made.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I also want that for my kids. I feel like for my kids in particular, when my parents were around, I thought they had it all figured out. They seemed all put together and whatnot. And I want to come to my kids and be like, listen, I don't have it all figured out. I'm still working through all of these things. And I don't want them to ever have some sort of like idealized version of me as a person, as a parent or whatever. I'm a work in progress. And that's still true in my career as well. I don't know what next year or 5 years from now or 10 years from now will hold, but everyone in the community is going to be a part of that, that cares about me and trusts me enough to share when I'm doing something wrong and helping me to walk through that.
I love that. We are all works in progress.
Absolutely.
For sure. All right. If you do want to learn more about Cherian, iWave, or AI for fundraising, we've included links in the show notes, as well as links to some of the other resources that we've talked about today. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Intentional Fundraiser podcast, and keep on transforming your fundraising so you can transform the world. Whew.
That's great.
You are awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. The Intentional Fundraiser podcast is a Fundraising Transformed original. It's hosted by me, Tammy Zonker, founder and president of Fundraising Transformed, where we help equip and empower fundraisers, nonprofit leaders, and board members to transform their fundraising so they can transform the world. Visit fundraisingtransform.com/podcast to subscribe to this podcast, and subscribe to my newsletter to get fundraising lessons, tools, and helpful resources delivered straight to your inbox each month. If you want my help with taking your fundraising to the next level, become a member of my Fundraising Transformers community as a growth member, and join me live each month, where I'll teach you the same strategies I use to lead, train, and coach thousands of nonprofits, social service organizations, healthcare foundations, private schools, colleges, and universities to collectively raise more than $500 million, including a single gift of $27.1 million. As a member, you can participate in my Ask Me Anything sessions every month and get answers to your burning questions. Chat with other growth members inside our private and safe online community about what you're working on, struggling with, and share lessons learned. And get instant access to my growing library of on-demand self-paced training classes. New content is added every single month. Learn more about becoming a member at fundraisingtransform.com/growth. Talk soon.